we're working on this story concerning possible conflicts that may have arisen.
Why now?
Well, we've just been we've been given a tip about it, and it may be late. You're right, but it seems to be coming to light now. Possible conflicts which may have arisen between what some of the Dallas doctors observed in the room where President Kennedy had been brought, and what photos at the autopsy show. Now, could you briefly review? I know you were an anesthesiologist at the time. You were called to the room with other doctors. Can you tell us where you were in relation to the president's body?
I was to the president's right, the right side of his head.
Right at the head?
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to examine the head wound?
Oh yeah. I discovered the back of the head wound, the back of the head, and called it to Kemp Clark's attention.
You did. Why was
I
that?
had a better chance to see it than its extent than anybody else.
Why was that? Were you there before Clark?
Well, no, not really necessarily. It's just that he was standing on the president's left, and the exit wound was to the president's right.
Did you examine it closely? Did you actually get down and sort of peer at it?
I looked at it real carefully, and then I said, Kemp, and pointed. He leaned across. He's a tall man. Called his attention to the wound, pointed to it. He looked across, leaned over, saw the big extent of the wound. He said, "Oh shit, school's out here."
Can you describe the wound for us, and where was it located, General?
A gaping hole as big as your fist.
Where was it located?
On the right parietal region.
Could you draw it for us on the stone?
Well, it was so covered with blood I couldn't really draw the extent of it.
Well, at least the approximate location. Here, this pen will do it, I believe.
Well, it was roughly, I'm not worth a damn as an artist.
Well, we're not planning to sell it in the gallery.
You know where it was in this area here. Not about that size.
About that size?
Yeah, this portion of the bone was just flat missing.
Now,
You understand what I'm saying?
mm-hmm.
I think that anybody that was there would attest to that. He said, school's out, and we ceased any further endeavors for resuscitation, except that we did keep him sort of on paper alive, pending the arrival of the Father Hoover, who was a Catholic priest.
As far as looking at the wound, were its margins fairly distinct? Could you tell where it began?
I couldn't tell because it was covered with blood.
Was it obscured by anything else?
Well, you know, sort of jagged sort of a thing.
Was
it wasn't very distinct because it was covered with blood and hair and flesh, etc., etc.
Could you see any the cerebellum or any cerebellar tissue?
No. I
see
couldn't tell it if I did.
You saw some brain tissue at all or none?
Oh, yeah.
But you couldn't tell what type it was?
I couldn't tell what type. Sorry, I can't be more definitive, but...
You, at the Warren Commission, you said, you testified, I'm quoting you now, that the back of the right occipital parietal portion of his head was shattered.
Yeah.
With brain substance extruding. Is this where you've drawn it today?
Parietal, his side, occipital, posterior.
Right. Is that occipital parietal in your mind?
Occipital parietal. This is the occiput.
Uh-huh.
This is the parietal. So we say that occipital parietal, indicating that it was sort of a margin by the occiput and the parietal area. And it's sort of a vague term.
Would you say would you say the wound was more in the parietal than in the occipital, or more in the occipital than the
I
parietal?
think probably slightly more in the occipital, which is the side area.
The occipital is the rear area, isn't it?
No. Occipital is. Parietal is the side area.
So you
what
say
are
it
you
was
saying?
slightly more where, again?
I said it was slightly more parietal. I meant to say parietal.
Okay.
So it was more parietal than it was
Occipital.
occipital.
Did you have a chance to, he was lying on his head, right, on his back.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to pick his head up and look at the back of the head?
No, I didn't take that liberty because the other fellows were working on tracheotomy.
Would you have known whether that wound extended further behind? If it did, would you have any way of knowing that?
Not really, I don't think. Nils, it's more of a guess situation. This probably goes back further.
You would guess that you're pointing to the skull and saying that the margin of the wound in the occipital area may extend further to the
That's
rear
right.
than you could see,
That's right.
and than what you've drawn here on the skull. Okay.
See, when he came in, he had what we call he had a heartbeat of sorts, but it was more of a agonal type of heart rate, because you often see in somebody who's also, for all intents and purposes, dead. And when I saw the guy, I assumed that he was a goner.
You did.
Now,
You know, you used to looking at people that are dead, and I hated to classify him as dead as long as they were working on him. But when I came in and saw that he had just an agonal respiration, which means that he was breathing about a agonal respiration usually means that one beat or one breath per minute.
right. When you, can I ask you just to clarify this drawing a bit? When you said that are you saying that the wound could have extended further back, or but this
Yeah.
is all you saw?
This is all I could see from watching.
What makes you think that it could have extended further back?
I just have to assume that it may have until it's proven otherwise.
Why? I mean,
Well,
was there any controversy?
And a wound that size, you have to assume that if you can't see the margin of the wound, and
You mean you could not see the rear margin of the wound?
no, I couldn't see the posterior or occipital margin.
But you did see the forward margin of it.
Yeah, pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I came to the conclusion that it was probably an exit wound.
Could it have extended in beyond what you've drawn here in any other direction other than occipital?
No, I don't think so.
Nils, can I show him the photo now?
Sure.
Doctor, this photograph I'd like to show you now. Actually, to be more precise, it's a tracing of a photograph which claims to be accurate to the hair. A photograph taken of the rear of the president's head at the autopsy. Showing this to you now, page 104 of the House Assassinations Committee report. I'd like to ask you, based on your recollections at the time, how does this photo square with what you saw?
Well, it looks like I was wrong in that if this is the wound here.
No, this is
that's a ruler.
This is a ruler.
That's a ruler.
Okay.
This is a ruler. This is right here is what appears to be a small wound in the cowlick area, which the officials later concluded was an entrance wound. No exit wound is evident in the rear.
That is not. That's not what I saw.
In what respect?
Well, number one, this is a lot larger. Number two, it was more than likely, I figured it was an exit wound, with the entrance wound directly in advance of this.
For the forward on the head, higher on the head towards the forehead.
You're saying that the wound was larger. You mean you're referring than this wound in the cowlick area?
Yeah.
Would you have had a chance to examine the cowlick area?
No, I didn't. I never touched his head.
Dr. Ben Israel, on this tracing of a photograph, this area purports to be the exit wound area. It's on the side of the head, the parietal area with a flap of skull. It's very indistinct here, perhaps, just where that rear margin of it is. Knowing that, does that affect your view of that photograph at all?
You said that there was a skin flap.
Well,
There's
you see this?
piece of scalp here, or skull, actually, attached apparently by muscle or
That
scalp tissue.
is more likely what I saw.
Now, if there is some sort of wound of exit in this area, as it's purported to be, is that consistent? Does that change your view of that photograph at all?
Yeah, I think so.
In what respect?
Well, it's, I think it's more compatible with what I described originally. Point of bleeding was more an exit wound. They say that this was an entrance wound. I don't believe that. I think that I was told by Dr. Clark that Kennedy had an entrance wound on his forehead.
On his forehead?
Mm-hmm.
Where on the forehead?
About like this.
On the left side?
Yeah,
You're pointing to your left
that's right.
temple, right
Left eyebrow.
left eyebrow area. Clark said he had a wound there.
I recall, yeah.
Did you see that yourself?
No, not really. Except that he did have a wound over there.
Could you indicate that on this skull where you would imagine?
Well, directly
You're looking at the.
opposed to this area.
Would you make an X or a circle where you?
But he said he didn't see that.
Well, true.
I didn't really examine
Okay.
it,
All right.
but I was told that he had an entrance wound.
I see.
Now, just so we can be square on this photo, referring back to this now for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, you said this is not what you saw, and then you
Well,
you looked
of
at
course,
this
I never
flap.
saw it cleaned up.
This flap is in the right parietal area. Does not appear to extend to the occipital area. Would that be consistent with what you observed?
Think about it. Run that by again, Ben.
I'm saying that this bone area here, this flap of bone that is seen,
Yeah.
it appears to be in the right parietal area. Am I right in that?
Well, it is more or less forward
Of the ear.
of the ear, and that is far forward from what I described as the occipital parietal wound was concerned. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. Is it far forward of what you observed?
Yeah, but here again, I can't really say because I didn't have a chance to clean up the skull and examine it.
Okay. Did you have any other questions on this?
Not on that photograph, no.
Sorry, I can't be more helpful.
Okay, let me just stop for a second. Dr. Ben Israel, I've darkened in the line you drew here and put your initials on. Is that still the line you drew?
More or less, yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you.
I'm not much of an artist.
Could you place using my pencil, I'm showing you a skull now superimposed on a piece of paper. Would you draw roughly the same area or that you say you observed on the skull also on the paper in terms of the wound you observed?
Well,
This is a rear view and this is a side view.
here, I would put down, since this is labeled occipital bone, I would put down the more low here.
Would you indicate it with the pen?
You don't let me perjure myself. Now this is lying on his side, on his back.
How about the rear view?
Do the same thing on that rear view?
Never saw it in the rear view, but let's see, that's
Of what you did see.
the right side.
That's the left side. You're on the left side now.
Left side now.
No, no.
This is a rear view of the skull.
I don't give a damn. It's still a right side. When you look at a medical drawing, you're looking at it in relief. So this is the right side and this is the left side, the way you read an X-ray. So, well, you understand what I'm saying?
I think the view of this is if somebody just went up behind your head right now and took a photograph.
You know?
This would be your right ear, and that would be your left ear. It says, in fact, right on that drawing, right temple.
Okay, but like I said, looking at it from the standpoint that this is the right side and this is the left side. But I'll play your game.
Well, let's play the game that's indicated on that drawing.
You understand what I'm saying? Well, to correlate with this, I can't really say because I didn't see the wound in terms of the bone. I didn't say, well, this is occipital bone or this.
Just the region. Just the region.
Yeah, well, this is more or less where I start.
You want to finish the circle or not?
Well, it doesn't work out as a perfect circle. I would like to make it work, but it doesn't.
Okay, fine.
That's the best indication you can make.
Yeah, more or less.
All right.
Actually, I think I'm probably the worst person to try to draw a sketch of the
Why is that?
well, because I didn't have a chance to clean them up and see what.
You said earlier that you were the first.
No, I didn't say I was the first.
The first to examine the head wound and call Dr. Clark to it.
No, I was the first one to notice that he had a gaping wound.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really have a chance to notice the extent of the head wound.
Can I ask you one other, examine one other drawing? I want to show you a drawing now that was prepared based on Dr. McClellan's, you recall him?
Yeah,
Dr.
Bob McClellan?
Bob McClellan's testimony to the Warren Commission. Dr. McClellan said that he took a position at the head of the operating table, and now I'm quoting, was in such a position that I could very closely examine the head wound, and I noted that the right posterior portion of the skull had been extremely blasted. He goes on to describe that in some detail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, based on his description, an artist...
Bob McClellan is the most religious man, and he is very unlikely to claim something that ain't so.
Well, no one is suggesting that.
He's just he was a fine surgical resident. Everybody had respect for.
Based on his description of the wound, an artist prepared this drawing of what the wound looked like.
Well, that looks like it was superficial, that is to say. It was not really involving bone, but it was bleeding and he had soft tissue damage.
Can you comment, though, as to the location where they've drawn the wound based on
That's probably
McClellan's?
what I saw.
This is probably what you saw?
More than likely. More than likely. And that is more accurate than I sketched out on that skull.
Would you characterize that as occipital parietal?
Well, it was more occipital than it was parietal, but it was a combination of both.
You said a while ago it was more parietal than occipital.
Yeah, I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
I don't know what I was talking about.
Are you saying that this is more occipital parietal, or what you saw was more occipital than parietal?
Well, in my judgment at the time, what I saw was more parietal. But on the basis of this sketch, if this is what Bob McClellan saw, then it's more occipital. Now, I have to agree with...
Let me show you another drawing prepared by someone who... Only a handful of people have seen the actual autopsy photographs. They've been impounded in the National Archives until the year 2039.
Well, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
One person who did see the autopsy photographs sketched this, showing the right temporal parietal area.
All right, I'm going to ask you, through and through wound of the bone of the skull, which is the larger?
Well, based on
which is the larger? Is it the
exit.
Bone, yeah, exit or the entrance?
Exit, based on what I've read.
Well, you bet your sweet bippy it is. And the FBI that had me testify on duty at the hospital, they insisted that I didn't know what I was talking about. I said, well, up yours, Charlie. I know what happens when you shoot a rifle slug into a can of sauerkraut. It explodes. You know, and you want to disagree with that.
He was trying to get you to change your opinion?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
As to exit and entrance
This is
wounds?
one of the reasons I said that this so-called exit wound actually was an entrance wound.
Okay, but let's talk about the location of this wound here. He's describing an in-shoot in the occiput and a massive wound in the right temporal parietal area here. We showed you the drawing based on McClellan's description, and now we'd just like to ask you to comment on how this view of the massive head wound conforms to what you saw.
What is this shaded area?
This is meant to be a gaping wound.
Area of the skull that's missing, blasted away.
Well, that's reasonable if he got shot in the rear.
No, but in terms of what you saw...
But in terms of what I saw was that what I assumed was an exit wound.
In terms of the location of that wound, how does it conform to what you saw?
Well, I didn't have a chance to see that portion of the skull.
You understand
You understand what I'm talking about?
Yes, I think I do. What I'd like to get you to say, to tell me though, is as you've described the wound to us previously, do you think that it is compatible with that illustration of it?
Well, this is just a contused area, but what I was talking about was an area of, what can I say?
Missing skull?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It represents a missing skull, a fantastic amount of damage.
This wound shows, I don't know if it's meant to show a contusion or blasted out skull, but it shows a large wound in the forward right temporal parietal section.
Almost the whole right side.
What we'd like your opinion on is whether this area that's located as the wound conforms to what you saw as the wound.
Not exactly, no. You know, you're putting somebody else's drawing down and asking me to fit it into my description.
No, I'm not. We're just asking you to say whether it squares with
Whether
yours.
it fits at all
Whether it
or
fits
not.
at all.
I won't say that it fits.
Okay.
This is not exactly what I saw, I don't know who prepared the drawing.
A man named Latimer.
Who in the hell was that?
He's a doctor in New York who's has been interested in the assassination, and who recently published a book.
Big deal.
In what way does it not conform with what you remember, that particular drawing?
Well, you know, it's difficult for me to I guess that this piece here supposedly comes from this area, as do these pieces.
Fragments.
And this is up to the dome of the skull, and I didn't see that.
You were just saying that if Dr. Latimer saw the skull after it was cleaned up,
Yeah,
then what?
he saw it.
He saw a photograph.
You can't perform a goddamn autopsy on the basis of a photograph. That's, you know, this is one of the things that gives me a pain in the tush, because all these damn books and articles and stuff.
Do you have any more questions on this, Latimer?
You know, what you're saying about the books and articles?
Well, they just they're written by people that don't really know what went on. They weren't there. At least I have one advantage over them.
Would you say that your recollection of what you saw that day is still pretty strong?
Yeah, hell yes, I'll never forget it. And furthermore, I will never forget how he looked and the 40 beats a minute his heart was going. And unless you were in that damn room, I don't think you know what he's like. His terminal, agonal actions were, and you know, what he presented.
Do you have any other particular questions on it?
No, not.
I hate to shoot down other people. It's just like, for crying out loud, I diagnosed Jack Ruby's lung cancer.
Can we turn this off now? This will conclude the formal interview.
It's just ship captains who are going to Cuba.
Did he ever talk about any relationship with the CIA he might have had?
I decided not to get into it. I just knew it was going on.
How did you happen to see that? To be in a position where you would see him do
Jack was careless about a lot of things.
Do you believe the Dallas police knew that he was in the jail the day he shot Oswald? Let him in effect?
Come again?
I say, there's been some speculation, you know, when Ruby shot Oswald,
Yeah.
that the Dallas police let him in the building.
He was a known police character. You know what that is?
By character, you mean what?
He was well known by the police. He had, you know, he was always there. He was trotting down the street for sandwiches and shit like that for the cops.
Mm-hmm.
And they figured that he was just trying to get in good with the police. And so he had access to the jailhouse and all that.
Did you treat Oswald as well?
I did his anesthetic when he got shot. I was in the barrel that damn weekend. Not because I enjoyed it. He's the only person I ever lost on the table.
Good.